Now that Lineker has been punished, it's worth looking again at the illegal migration bill and what Lineker in his brief tweet said. Is this reminiscent of 1930s Germany? Now, it's very important that it's limited to 1930s Germany and doesn't go through into the 1940s, so we're not talking about Suella Braverman presiding over death camps. That is never the suggestion, but we are suggesting that she is using the language of xenophobia and the language of exclusion. And that defines Germany in the 1930s. And the language of popularism. I think in all those three, Lineker is correct, but you have to put it in context. It's a human right. It's a human right to be able to claim asylum. It's part of the 1951 Refugee Convention that also agrees that people can claim asylum having got to a country by an irregular route, that is, an illegal route. And this is further embellished or further confirmed by a British court in 1999, which effectively guaranteed that people had about 70 days grace to travel through supposed safe territories. Now, this was in the days when Dublin III was applied and people could move through the Schengen territories, and the assumption was, under Dublin III, that whatever first country in Europe one arrived at, that would be the country that would have to process one's asylum application. That, of course, put enormous pressure on the southern countries like Greece, Italy, and Spain. But it also allowed the development of European law and British law also allowed for the possibility, under the Madrid exclusion, that somebody from one European country might actually claim asylum and be allowed to claim asylum in another European country. So from one safe country, claiming asylum in another safe country. Perfectly legitimate. So all this talk about safe countries, which Suella Braverman uses, is purely rhetorical, and she knows it because she's been involved in immigration law. So that's point one. Point two is the sort of laws which are being proposed, and one of the worst is this idea of a summary detention without legal recourse for 28 days. This is a British version of the proposed US Title 42. It seems to me to be entirely wrong. The other proposed law is the idea that people will be shipped off to Rwanda. Well, the Rwanda plan is based loosely on Australia's Pacific model, and that certainly recalls Germany's Madagascar plan, but that doesn't come into effect really until the 1940s. So from that point of view, Lineker anticipates but is wrong. The language which is used, well, here I think Lineker is on much safer ground. The language is nationalistic rhetoric, an appeal to popular support. She stops short of calling for a referendum, a plebiscite, but it is the language of a demagogue. And this is very much the stuff of 1930s Germany. It's central to what we hear from Hitler and his cronies. But it's also, and this is important, the stuff of 1930s Britain and before. And I think we ought to take careful note of the 1905 Aliens Act, which stopped Jews fleeing to Britain from the pogroms. It stopped Jews coming here and settling here. That 1905 Act, very important. Now, Lineker should remember that people rarely emigrated from Germany, really emigrated to Germany. They generally emigrated from Germany. They were seeking asylum from Germany in the 1930s, not to Germany. There were some people who went to Germany. They were often rather foolish. But the people's priority here in Britain is what's Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak are appealing to. The people's priority is to stop migration to Britain, or to limit migration to Britain, and to draw a distinction between the deserving and the undeserving poor. That sounds very Dickensian, doesn't it? So again, Lineker's reference to Germany probably is misplaced. But Germany, I'm sure, was a net exporter of people rather than a net importer of people. And when it comes to whether or not this really is the people's priority, well, a number of polls have confirmed that migration is actually at the bottom of the list. The cost of living is at the top of the list, then the NHS, then very far down, migration. It's not the people's priority by any means. And what else are we in danger of doing? Well, we're in danger of replicating the activity of Britain when it stopped the Exodus boat going to Palestine. We're in danger of America stopping the St. Louis boat docking, or was that in Canada? I can't remember where it first tried to dock, but it did try and dock eventually in America, and it failed. We're in danger of sending refugees back to where they started. And again, that is not Germany. That is other countries around the world. But in terms of inciting xenophobia, that is certainly a German trait. And Suella Braverman is already on record thumping the dispatch box and talking about an invasion. And that is definitely the stuff of 1930s Germany. The threat of the other and the idea that we should be safe in our own little country. Indeed, we should expand our country. I don't think Suella Braverman has yet got to the point where she's talking about expansion, but she's certainly talking about an invasion. And that's also, of course, the sort of language that Vladimir Putin is using at the moment to justify his attack on Ukraine. We know it's false there, and I'm afraid it's false here. So I don't think, when it's examined carefully, Gary Lineker's comments about a parallel between 1930s Germany and Suella Braverman's Britain today is entirely justified, but the spirit of what he says is absolutely bang on, and I would support it to the hilt.